Hey, and welcome. Yes, hey, and welcome, you guys. Thanks for clicking on the video. Before your girl gets into the thing, I have to remind you to do all the things on the bottom of the screen. Please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment in the comment section. Share because sharing is caring. And please turn on your notifications because life be lifing. Season 2 is upon us. So your girl decided to come to you and give you a not so quick summary or recap, if you will, of season 1 of Reasonable Doubt. Now, how I'm going to handle it, because I'm a little long-winded and I like to take a lot of notes, is we're kind of going to scrunch up and summarize as much as we can of episodes 1 through 8, and then at the end it'll be basically episode 9 breaking down the end of what happened, which was our finale for the season, and we will be all set to go into season 2. Also, be sure to keep, checking the community tab, because your girl will be recapping season 2. They're giving us 2 episodes at once, so bear with me. I'm going to try to do that as 2 separate videos, unless they don't give us much, and then I'll put them both together. But let's get started. So we open the season with our main character, Jax, in a bit of a predicament. She's tied up in a chair and she is pleading and praying to the Lord above. Oh, yes. And then we hear a pop. Now, we don't revisit this scene until the end of the episode, because they're going to kind of give us, to the end of the season, they're going to kind of give us a full circle moment, as they like to do. Jax is a lawyer, a defense attorney at that, and she is played by the beautiful Emma Yahtzee Cordinale. If I have pronounced her name wrong, chart it to my head, not my heart, because sometimes, baby, it just happens that way. Her husband, Lewis, who is a game designer, is played by McKinley Freeman. You've seen him a bunch of places. And the two have a son, Spencer, who gives her a hard time throughout the season, and a daughter, Naima. Now, Naima's only 10, but she ends up getting her friend in the midst of all the going-ons while she's with her dad. Lord, God bless the daddies sometimes, okay? And though they go to church as a family every Sunday, they are in a trial separation. He asked her to choose between the marriage and the job, and, well, she did. Jax used to be a public defender, but now she defends some real class acts, like a basketball player who likes to make people uncomfy. If you know, you know. And as I said earlier, because Lewis and Jax are having some troubles with their marriage, he lives elsewhere. He's kind of renting a little Airbnb for the time. But since Jax has these famous and dangerous, I'm going to give it air quotes because she likes to mock her husband when he says that, clients, the hubby has hired Will to protect her and the kids. Now, Will provides a little more than protection when he gets it in with Jax on his last day, I might add. Sir had a record, and I guess he didn't disclose it, and good guy Lewis took advantage of that. On her sofa while Lewis is watching at his home on the camera. Baby, it was too much. It was a lot. I don't know how, but he liked it. I love it. Now, this was only after Lewis left her hot and bothered a few days before. And also, I believe it was the same night after she left her mother's in a tizzy, which we'll learn a little bit about that later on in the recap. Our girl Jax has quite the sexual appetite, if you will, okay? So the next morning, she has the good brother Will sprung. He's trying to make breakfast, and ma'am, she wants no parts. So she ghosts him and starts to stalk her for a little while. Now, he disappears until later in the season, and then we kind of get rid of him for good. But let's talk Jax's friends. Jax has 3 good girlfriends. Chanel, whose husband, JT, I believe it's a professional football player, and he is having an affair. Autumn, who is actually Chanel's cousin, and Sally. We don't get too much into Sally or Autumn. We get a lot of Chanel this season, and now we're going to be getting a lot more Chanel in season 2. But, Autumn and Sally are, they're throughout. You know, you got to have those good homegirls to hold you down. And they do just that. I'm not going to give you too much about them in the recap because they don't have that much of a role to play. But if you watch the series, you know. Now, Jax's main client is for the season is Braden Miller, who is played by Sean Patrick Thomas. Now, initially, he works with her partner, Rich, and he's looking to get an NDA for his liquor company, Clout, signed. He let go of a former EVP, Kalisha Moore, who he was also having an affair with and who was claiming little of S to the A, right? So she refuses to sign this NDA and plans to go on Good Morning America. Miller says, I know what she needs, and he plans to give it to her whether she likes it or not. Now, this is what he tells Rich. We should have known something was up, because if you as a person are willing to say this to your lawyer, we just have to know you have issues from the jump. So before Good Morning America can happen, Miss Moore is, well, no more. Yikes. In the midst of all of this, Damon Cook, a former client from her public defender days, is up for parole. Now, Damon Cook is played by none other than Michael Ealy, Mr. Kill Your Show, Mr. Light Eyes. He wants to enter a guilty plea so he can get out of jail or prison. Is it jail, prison, whichever one it is? You guys can feel free to get down in the comments and correct me. Against her wishes, you know, he does just that. And he shows up at her church one day because he lives across the street in a halfway house. And he also works with his brother CJ, whose activities could land him right back inside. Now, their mom passed away when he was young, and dad stepped up until he passed away. So now it's just the two of them. We're getting a little bit of a flashback. So when we're in the past covering this case, Jax and Damon have an unorthodox relationship, if you will, while he's on trial. And though she has to step up and become his head counsel, and she tries her absolute best, the jury ultimately finds him guilty. Now, his outbursts on Miguel's cross, I'm sure, did not help his case. So after they lose the case, Damon, he just doesn't want to appeal. He doesn't want to appeal. He's ready to give up. You know, he's just gonna sit it out and stick it out. And Jax gets into her car and proceeds to have a car accident where she meets now husband Lewis. Fast forward back to the present time. Since his release, she's helped Damon get a new PO when things went awry. And yet again, these two become more than friends. They end up going out to dinner. And when the restaurant can't take his card, Jax pays. So one day he decides to show up at her house and pay her back, which he said he would. And she gave him the address. So you already know. Now, these two, like I said, unorthodox relationship. They was doing some things. When he was on a burner phone in the prison, you just had to be there because we're not about to describe all of that. But it got a little hot and heavy over the phone, if you will. Now, somehow, he ends up in her house. And, well, you know the rest. On the counter, just doing what grown-ups do. Now, add to Jax's plate a strained relationship with her father, who we do not see throughout the season. He's been absent in her life. He was an addict, and he was in and out of jail. And her mother, played by the Pauletta Washington. Her mom remarried a man named Paul, who was at the time currently sick. He was part of Jax's life, and he promised to do lots of things, like give her money for a car. But Paul was also an alcoholic, and he couldn't keep his hands to himself. So we saw him do a bunch of little things, you know, that could, you know, be a word that ends with rooming. He walks into the bathroom on her one time when she's like barely wrapped in a towel. And then one night he finally climbs into her bed when he's a little, you know, intoxicated. So he apologizes the next day. And he says he was drunk and thought it was her mom. She's distraught. She's she's torn up. And when Mama Lou finds out, which is Jax's mom, she sends him packing. Well, kind of, sort of, because she's kind of, sort of doing it for her daughter and kind of, sort of blaming her daughter for him having to leave because he's not ready to give up his addiction. And, woe is me. And what is I going to do? Yeah, Mama Lou had me heated this season. And then we hear her later explain to Lewis because she likes Lewis and she wants, Lewis and Jax to get back together. So she's kind of explaining that her and Paul have been separated for 10 years, but he pursued her, and let her know that he wanted her and he changed. And absolutely not, Mama Lou. Absolutely not. Like, I get the forgiveness part, but taking him back, I was on Jax's side with this one, and this messed her up. She ends up having this conversation again with her mom later on in the season. So at the end of the day, Jax ends up representing Miller when he becomes a suspect in Kalisha's unaliving. We get a little bit of his backstory where he had a little brother that was taken out by a stray. And currently he has a pet wife, Sarah, who didn't know about the affair, and a business partner named Thea. Well, Sarah finds out, I'm going to give air quotes, during the course of the case. Theo claims he had no idea about the affair until recently when Kalisha wasn't happy. He says that she was trying to cut herself into deals with the business, but she presented a world that Brayden wanted access to but didn't have. She provided him entry to the urban market that he never felt accepted by. And Theo, he wasn't too fond of her black girl magic. And honestly, Theo was not very fond of Jax either. He was doing all that he could to try to get Rich to step up. But Jax was the criminal lawyer, so this was more of her repertoire. Now, Kalisha's cousin, Fallon, she begins to wear these red glasses just like Kalisha had. And she may prove to be a little bit of a problem. Now, even though Jax seems to think she has the case in the bag because Kalisha did sign the NDA the night of her demise, we find out that Kalisha has another cousin named Morgan, who we find out during the trial is Fallon's daughter. She was crashing at Kalisha's place for a while and caused a lot of problems. So now we have these two that are giving us a little something, something. Daniel, who's Jax's go-to or right-hand man, he tells Morgan and her boyfriend when they go to a pawn shop, trying to get this laptop. It's Kalisha's laptop that they should have had, the police should have had in their possession. So poor Daniel, he ends up taking a bad beating. Now, though she was upset, Morgan, that is, with Kalisha for leaving her high and dry, and she could use a few extra dollars, she didn't do anything with her. So once Daniel is all healed and recovered and out of the hospital, with Jax's negotiation skills, he pays Morgan and they secure the laptop. Now, they're not supposed to have this laptop, baby. And she wasn't supposed to have the laptop, but they got it. Eventually, they'll have to turn it in. But for now, they got it. Jax is hard at work for Brayden. Does he deserve it? Probably not. And against her wishes, Chanel's wishes, that is, Jax reaches out to JT to have Brayden say a few words at his event. So he gives a speech on, not carrying the strap, and he tells a story about being robbed, and he's speaking out on, the violence. But afterwards, Jax didn't really realize how bad things really were with Chanel and JT. And I don't think any of us did. I mean, there were clues, but we didn't know for sure till the end of this season. And that she had been staying at Sally's guest house. So Jax apologizes. Also, while we're at this event, Kalisha's husband, Ryan, because yes, Kalisha was still married, approaches Sarah, who, let's remember, that is the wife of Brayden at the event, about her emails to Kalisha. Now, ma'am says she doesn't know what he's talking about and to stay away. I said, yikes, 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 yikes. Well, he does that. But what does she do? She gives him a call. She gives him a call a couple of days later and says that the emails that she sent aren't the end of the story. So they meet up. He was talking about getting back with Kalisha before she was taken out, and he just wants Brayden to pay for what he did. But Sarah says, listen, Brayden, he's entitled and he throws money at problems, but he didn't do this. Baby, at this point, I had my good eye on Sarah because Sarah had a lot of privilege and Sarah had a lot of access and was getting a lot of stuff done. So I had my good eye on Sarah, I must admit. Now, she was worried because obviously she did know about the affair prior to Kalisha's demise. So since he's in court, this doesn't look so good for her. During this trial, we find out that Ryan was on medical leave from work while Kalisha and Brayden were involved. Like I said, Sarah used that good old access to get a hold of his medical records. Huge HIPAA violation, but you know, privilege gone privilege. And we find out that there was a 5150 for Mr. Moore after Kalisha came to work with they said red eye. I said a red eye. Okay. He said it was an accident. So now Jax is kind of trying to establish that he's volatile and that he could possibly be violent. Now, originally Brayden had planned to sell Clout, but he had a change of heart. Now, Theo is still going behind his back, trying to move forward with the sale. He tells him that Kalisha was stealing money from the company and he has the receipts. Sir says Brayden was not on his game. Brayden goes back to Jax and presents her with this info about Kalisha. She reveals to him that she has the laptop. Like I said, they're not supposed to have it, but she needs to turn it over. So she wants to know, listen, before it gets out there, you need to let me know what she knew, what she was about to tell. So Kalisha was going to blow the whistle because essentially we start out with Theo overvaluing the company, but now we also add to that she was allegedly taking money. So Jax tells Brayden to keep Theo close. Baby, we never trusted Theo. Never trusted Theo. But Brayden trusts him with the documents and tells him no secrets. Big mistake, because behind his back during the trial, Theo is still trying to move forward with the sale. So when we get to the trial, we hear a voicemail that Kalisha left for Ryan the night that she was taken out, where we could hear her final breaths. Ryan is in the clear because of the voicemail, and also the lady established that the phone did not ping at the same location. So Sarah, willing to go the extra mile always, pops up at Ryan's after court. She suggests, because, you know, we know that Ryan wants to get revenge. He says he wants to see Brayden locked up, but she suggests that he gets even with Brayden for sleeping with his wife by sleeping with her. She said, that's what you're really mad about, because he has slept with your wife. I said, don't trust it, Ryan. Don't trust it. But, you know, Ryan is, you know, he's a little weak in the flesh. And Brayden catches homegirl sneaking in that night. Now, later we see Brayden, I guess, had somebody following her because he has pictures of the two of them speaking. And she says she was protecting the family at any cost because he's a liability. Because, you know, she said that Brayden was not doing his due diligence and was trying to destroy the family. You know, man wasn't having it. So as the trial moves forward and things are tense between things are tense between Jax and Damon. They go from being at her place to hotels, and he gets upset when he couldn't go to her reunion where JT showed his ass after, acted a plumb fool. And that she basically just doesn't have time or energy for him with everything that's on her plate. Understandable, but, you know, he's been locked up, so he's not familiar with lifing. And now he's just not taking any of it well, to say the least. So he decides to circle back to his brother and get involved in the activities that he's had going on to bring in some extra cash to impress Jax. What is his brother doing, you ask? Switching car parts. We knew it was something illegal. Switching car parts. So one day, and Jax is at her office. Her friend comes by and offers her some advice. I believe, I can't remember if this was Sally or Autumn. I know it wasn't Chanel, but one of them comes by and gives her some advice pertaining to Damon because she had disclosed one night, what was going on. The friends kind of knew about him in the past, and we're calling him vacation, given he's the weekend. She's calling Damon vacation. So it's just not working out for Jax. So her friend is telling her that playing with people's emotions has consequences. So if he's telling you what he wants and you don't want the same, then let him know sooner than later. I said that is great advice. Amen, amen. If I will be snapping if we was at a poetry joint. So Jax decides to drop him a letter, a Dear John or Dear Damon letter, if you will, in the mail, in an envelope from her company's law firm. I just knew this was a bad idea. But somehow, these two still continue to sleep together. And he wants more. And she says yes in the throes of passion. And we're just going from bad to worse at this point. So when she's in the shower, Will is texting her like crazy, and Damon deletes the messages. This will come back up later in the season. So Lewis runs into JT, who was on his Kevin Samuels, and said he got his lady together, and she was on one, and now she's back home, and blah 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 blah. So he invites him to a private fight party at his business partner's. So now while we're at this fight party, he runs into Tony, a single mom from the school that he ran into earlier in the season. He talks to JT and Sally's husband, Chris, about all the sacrifices that he's made for Jack. And he just wants to go to therapy because he feels that she's just looking for a cosigner. Okay, you thinking that. Sometimes a therapist will be on your side, but I digress. And then later on, we do see him have a conversation with Jax. He's also telling her the same thing about his sacrifice. And she says that he resents her for doing what she loves, and she resents him for holding what she loves against her. Whew. Neither one of them is happy, and I hate to see it. So she says that she needs more time, but he doesn't know how much more time he can give. But back to this fight party, baby. So JT is on this, I do what I want to do, and she ain't the boss of me. Like, this is very much where he's at. So Chris is like, he's about to go. JT goes on about his business. Chris is like, I'm about to go. And he tells Lewis, listen, I think that you should do the same too. Because, what you don't see, you don't know. But does Lewis listen? No. So he's walking around the house, opening doors all random, all willy-nilly, and he runs into JT having a threesome with Tony and some other woman. I said, well, he did tell you if you took your behind out of there, you'd have to find out things like that. So I'm guessing that he had an idea that JT was up to no good and, having these relations on our girl Chanel. So now we get to their kid's birthday party. That's JT and Chanel, and Tony is also in attendance. So Lewis is asking, are you guys in an open relationship? The answer is no. And ironically, Chanel thinks that they're in a good place and has a side conversation with Lewis and hopes that he and Jax can also get there. I said, man, you getting a little on your high horse because, it's real up and down. You're getting a little bit on your high horse. And Jax is, been talking cash-ish about this lady staying with her cheating husband. But speaking of Jax, she's still chilling with Damon. Now, his brother CJ isn't happy about it because he ends up missing a job to spend time with her. She doubles back to the note that she wrote him originally, saying that, listen, this is all I can give you right now. Like, I know what I had said in throes of passion, and I was kind of like, yeah, but it's really not. And while they're out having this dinner, I was about to say coffee, this dinner, she had the babysitter come over last minute. She gives the babysitter the address in case of an emergency. Now, Lewis is calling her like crazy, but she's ignoring it. Where is Lewis, you ask? He's outside in the car. He gonna cry in the car. He's watching. So his ego is the best of him. He's hurt, and so he takes a ride, if you know what I mean, with Tony. He calls his brother, who we did see earlier in the season. There wasn't much to say about him, so I didn't really bring him up. But he calls his brother and says that he's done with Jax for good. He tells Jax later on in a conversation that he saw her with Damon. He doesn't know his name, but tells her he saw her with old dude, and that he's consulted with the lawyer. He's consulted with the divorce attorney. But Jax, she still don't know what she's wanting. She's very much riding both sides of the fence. So she goes home and she's crying about it, and this tears her up so much because at this time, while she's going through also all of this, Paul, her mom's ex, that I guess she's back with, well, she is back with, is also in the hospital. She's going through a lot, and Chanel comes over to talk. Now, apparently, this is the only person that she ever told what happened with Paul. She hasn't even told Louis because she knew that he forbid the kids from, seeing Paul and the mom, which can we blame him? We totally understand. Now, she also takes the time to tell her about how she's been seeing Damon. Up until this point, Chanel didn't know. I think either Sally or Autumn, whichever one came into that office. I think it's Autumn because I think Sally's husband is Chris. Autumn, right? So another thing that she also tells us, sorry, the brain went whoop, whoop, whoop. She tells her that Louis is talking divorce. Now, Chanel mentions that she had that conversation with Louis, and Jax gets upset. It's yikes, baby. It's yikes. They back and forth. It's, there's some apologizing had. But let's get back to this trial. So now at the trial, Jax has a criminalist reveal that there was a partial fingerprint on the bowl of the wine glass that was used to take Kalisha out. That wasn't hers or Brayden's. So Daniel is busy trying to figure out whose fingerprint it could be, while Jax is busy working on character witnesses. We don't want Brayden taking a stand. They really want to get his mom up there. They're considering Theo, but in the interim, Theo does an interview on national TV where he announces that he is the interim CEO. I said, yikes. Brayden was sitting with Sarah like, what the heck happened? She's like, he just took the company over you on national TV. So Rich, who had been Theo's buddy, but not really, helps with the fingerprint search by taking Theo out for drinks so Daniel can swoop in and do what he does by getting the print off the glass. While we are up on the stand, Jax throws Sarah under the bus because she knew about the affair, and she also has nobody to corroborate her whereabouts. Now, all Jax is really trying to do is create reasonable doubt, but Sarah is not feeling it. Up next is Theo. Kalisha was going to whistleblow that he overvalued the company, and also he was the one embezzling funds. Baby, you should have seen Brayden's face when Jax had disclosed that. He also saw Kalisha on the night of her unaliving. So that night at Brayden's house, Jax comes over. We're talking trial. We're strategizing. We're apologizing, all the things. And he hugs Jax and tries to kiss her. Whew, child. That same night, Will shows up at Jax's place. Now, we remember that Damon erased his messages, and Louis apparently got him let go of his last job, so he's there looking for a reference and a job. She says, have her assistant. She says she'll have her assistant get on it first thing in the morning. But when she opens the door to have him leave, Damon is there, and he attacks Will. So she tells him, Damon that is, that he needs to leave. And she apologizes to Will. Will's getting himself off, dusting himself off and trying again. And he's like, listen, never mind. Meeting you is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I said, oh, what a night. Jax had a night, baby, okay? So he does apologize the next day, Damon, that is. But he's unraveling. Like, Sarah's not wrapped too tight. He's been locked up. He's been through some things. And so, the head is just going crazy. But she also told that, what is that? What am I trying to say here? I think she also told him at this point that she did not want to that she wasn't going to get a divorce, and that she did want to work it out. I don't know what the heck that says up there, but that's what conversation they had. So He kind of goes on about his business, but like I said, Sir is not taking any of this too kindly. So now we're at the trial, and Brayden, he also is owing her some apologies for what happened. And his mom takes a stand. She talks about losing her youngest son and how she got a strap because she was ready to, get rid of the guy herself, but Brayden destroyed it, and it brought the family together. Now we're just trying to establish that he isn't violent. Jax has been distracted, and after trial, she has a conversation with her assistant, Crystal. She decides to go pay Paul a visit because Crystal points out, like, this whole Paul thing has you distracted. Now, Crystal don't know what happened with Paul, but, I think she just thinks because he's sick, he's in the hospital, that was, her stepfather, the guy that kind of stepped in to raise her a little bit. And all of this stuff that transpired with them was when Jax was 16. I don't know if I mentioned that. So she goes to visit him in the hospital, and she starts to talk to him, and he says he wants to leave the past in the past. It's a mistake, and he regrets it. So Jax is like, was it a mistake? Was it a mistake? And she recalls all the prior times that she can remember because she, believes that some of them she wiped out of her head for obvious reasons. He says he can respect her truth, but it's not his. She says she sees him for who he is, and if he comes close to her baby girl, it will be his last. Now, as she walks out, he was trying to hit the little button for the nurse, and as she walks out, she kind of throws the little button at him, and the mama comes in, and the machines is going off, and baby Paul is gone. But Jax has also come to some revelations herself. I'm going to give you guys a quick little break and like the video, and we will get into episode 9, which was the finale. Okay, you guys, not too long. Don't want to make this video too long. I hope you guys have taken a minute to do what it said, like and subscribe and all the things. So now in our final episode, we see it all unfold. We go back to 6 months and we see Kalisha's last moment. And she signs the NDA when Brayden comes over, or so he thinks, and they make love one final time. Theo pays her a visit after that, and he accuses her of stealing money from the company, but she has proof of who the real thief is. So she tells Theo that she signed the NDA and they kick rocks. She kicks him on out, and it was his print. We see him pick up the wine glass. It was his print, in fact, that was on the wine glass. Now, on the way home, Brayden decides to open his NDA and have a look-see, and he sees a F-U on the signature line. So he doubles back to pay Kalisha another visit. Kalisha gets very bugged, like, oh, you couldn't even make it home to your wife. Like, you can't control this. She's talking trash, talking cash money. And speaking of money, she says without his clout, that's the name of his company, or her, he's just another ashy Negro from DC trying to get his black card. Well, sir didn't like that. So he pushes her to the floor. He closes the door. She throws a wine glass at him, and he kind of tosses the place, and then he picks up the broken stem from that glass right into the side of her neck. And he leaves. So she's laying there and she's bleeding, and that's when we see her call her husband. So like I said, Jax had an epiphany at the end of episode 8 after leaving Paul, and along with her crew, she's comparing the signature on the NDA to Brayden's signature when he gave her a condolence card for Paul, right? And it looks like forgery. So after Paul's funeral, we're at the house, I think, and Chanel is telling Jax, like, listen, girl, you're free. And she encourages her to share with Louis because, she had been afraid to tell him before for the obvious reasons. But first, Jax has to have a heart-to-heart with Mama Lou. Now, Mama Lou is still defending him while Jax is telling her how unsafe she felt. But like I said, the mom really tried to make her feel bad that she even had to, make the man leave in the first place. So Mama Lou was on my last nerves. So we see Jax meet up with Damon, and she tells him, like, listen, it's not fair to continue this relationship. And, she's going to try and save her marriage if she can. He goes on afterwards and tells CJ that she broke up with him. And he's like, I'm not surprised and I'm glad. So Damon's like, listen, I don't want to do no more of the illegal business. Like, I was just doing it for Jax. But CJ, who's mad that he wasn't doing it for him, he fires him from the legal business. And then he starts talking cash shit. Like, it's just not Damon's day. He's like, Dad gave him, his name and the business because Damon was caught up with some woman, some ginger. Now, we don't never hear the end of this. And I thought in rewatching it, we did hear about it, but maybe that's why he had gotten to the physical scuffle, that ended him up in the prison, even though, he said he didn't do it and all of the things, right? So at Brayden's trial, Jax gives her final statement. And later on in the parking garage, he's kind of asking her how she knew, because she kind of called him out a little bit before they went in. So she was like, listen, I was gaslit by a man just like you. But Brayden's like, we're one and the same. Oh, Jax did not like that. And he tells her that the story he told about being robbed, it was him who actually took the kid out. Because they said the kid ended up gone, I think 2 days later, something like that. But he said he was not going to risk being taken out after his brother's passing. So, she's getting that Brayden is giving, narcissist vibes, a little bit of a psychopath, sociopath, one of the paths. So he says if it's between him and somebody else, it will be him. And if she's thinking about getting his way, to think again. So on her way home, she ends up getting into an accident. And at first, we're thinking it's kind of like she did when she met Lewis, but kind of an accident, kind of not. It looks more like somebody rear-ended her, and when she goes to get out, somebody snatches her up. So now the babysitter called Lewis when Jax doesn't shows up. So he calls Mama Lou and gets Mama Lou to watch the kids. Now he, of course, he had all the cameras. He turned the cameras off at one point, but he still had a tracker on his phone. So he goes and finds Jax's car and Jax's phone, but no Jax. So he calls Daniel and tells him what happened. Smart move, because Daniel is the man. Okay, Daniel be on top of it. Daniel is very much giving gladiator, oh child, scandal. So he goes to his police friend to check out the scene, while Lewis, he goes to pay Chanel and JT a visit. Now they haven't seen her, but she's able to give him a little bit of information by letting him know that the guy that Jax was seeing, his name is Damon. So he goes to pay Damon a visit at the shop, and he's packing. He's like, he can't help him. He's like, I don't F with married women, and he hasn't seen her. So Lewis kind of gives him his number if he hears anything. But smartly, Lewis just kind of goes and sits outside and waits. He never came out, so he goes and reports this back to Daniel. Now, Rich calls Brayden looking for Jax because he hasn't seen her. And lo and behold, Damon does have Jax tied up in the chair like we saw in the opening on episode 1. I told you he was going to double back to it. So he says he sat in jail all those years, but she gave him hope. And that's why he lied about committing the crime he didn't commit. So he could get out and essentially be with her and have a different kind of life. He feels like she let him on, but she tries to assure him that it was all genuine. So she tells him, you make me feel understood and seen. But life has changed. I's married now and I have kids. But seriously, honestly, he's kind of telling her, it's all her fault. She made him do this. And he's telling her how he saw a lot in prison, that he refused to be a victim because, it's either get down, lay down, and you don't want to lay down. So he tells her that she made a big mistake. And she tells him she cares about him, but she cannot throw her marriage away for potential. Baby, she gonna eat them words, or she not gonna eat them. I mean, the words are gonna be ate. So then that's when we see her, start crying for her life and begging and praying and all the things. But he says to her, I can never hurt you the way you hurt me. And we hear sirens in the background. And he says, here's to potential. I told you, just, it's gonna come back around. and he takes himself out. So Daniel had the police friend help find Jax. He's there with Crystal, and Lewis, comforts Jax, gets her home. And so when they're at home, Mama Lou has the kids. Jax finally decides to tell him what happened with Paul. Now he's upset that she kept it from him because, like we thought, he was upset about having the kids around this man. She knew this. So he says he was sorry that it happened. He tells her he was sorry that it happened to her and that she couldn't trust him. She couldn't trust him with that information. So she's asking him, like, do you even want to move forward, with the two of them? And he's like, he doesn't know. But when she asks him about therapy, he says he's willing to try. So he stays the night and he gets to stay in Miss Jax's bed. Okay. Oh, yay. Your girl was happy because I really did want Jax and Lewis to get back together. Now, only time will tell if that's what's going to happen. But from here, I was a little optimistic. So now it's verdict day and we wrap this whole thing up. Not too bad. We probably gonna come in about 40 minutes. Not 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So it's verdict day the next day and we get to court and they find Brayden not guilty. Brayden, he says, thanks. Jax says, F you. So as he's leaving the court and he's in the parking garage, Brayden is telling Sarah how grateful he is for her. He wants to make it up to her and the kids with a trip. And she says she's not going. She's looking out for her. And so she'll be filing for divorce, taking the kids and half. Baby, Brayden was not happy. I was a little worried for Miss Sarah, but Miss Sarah hopped on in her Uber and skedaddled on out of there on about her business. So we see as everybody's kind of getting back to business as usual. He's in the office and smiling from ear to ear. He's at the head of the table. And we see Fallon, Kalisha's husband, gets an envelope, I believe, from Jax's law firm with the real numbers for clout. 2 seconds later, we see somebody come in and tell Brayden that they are under investigation for fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. I said, clapping it up. Okay. Because if we can't get you one way, we're going to get you another. Because you did that. Everything you said you did, everything they said you did in my Tupac voice, you did that. Okay. So now Jax is taking her run, feeling kind of cathartic. She gets a call from Chanel and she asks Chanel, can she call her back? And we hear her say F, right? Because we see in the background JT's body on the ground. And that is where the episode ends. I didn't do too bad with episode 9. And girl was a little worried because after I did the summary from 1 through 8 and kind of crunched everything up the way that I could, and then I had episode 9, I was like, ooh, baby, I don't know what we're going to do. And I don't want to make this too long because this was just supposed to be old high points of the episodes. It was a lot to go through. But I want you guys to get down in the comments and let me know how you like the season and if you're ready for season 2, because by the time I get this up, it will be after midnight and the season will be out shortly. Now, Damon is gone, so we do not have to look at Michael Ealy anymore. It looks like Jax and Lewis head to therapy, and I am rooting for these guys. Jax finds a lawyer for Chanel and Morris Chestnut. Yes, I am happy to see him. I am here for it. Like I said, I hope Jax and Lewis make it and that Chanel wins her case. I want you guys to get that in the comments and let me know, what are your thoughts on the season? What do you want to see going forward? What are you most excited about? Also, while you're here, please check out some of my other videos. Your girl is, trying to do her thing. Help me get to 1,000 by the end of the year by sharing this video where you share your videos. Sharing is most definitely caring, okay? I appreciate you guys ever so kindly. I hope that you guys will join me in the future for more videos, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.